What is up, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. Today we have probably maybe the most, I would say, informed person that we've had on the podcast so far. This is a pretty extensive list of degrees that you have, man. He is the Precision Nutrition's head strength and sports psychology coach. He also earned his PhD in sports and exercise psychology from Springfield College. We want to welcome to the podcast today, Adam Feit. How you doing, man?
Wow, I was feeling a lot better before that intro of high quality right there.
Yeah.
You're putting me on a big platform right there, huh?
If you saw his eyes when he was reading, he was like, "Whoa, this dude is knowledgeable."
I thought I was smart. I thought I usually like to be the smart one in these podcasts, but I don't think that's going to be the case today.
You gotta choose your crowd and podcast host wisely. So
Yeah.
I'm about to take you back to school here.
I'm just a
but it's awesome. Great to connect, guys, and look forward to just kind of talking life, coaching, and whatever shows up on the table. So we're gonna get it done.
Yeah.
So are we. So let's just kind of dive in. How did you get your start in the fitness industry, or take us kind of a little bit down your own personal fitness journey?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on how you look at it. It could be cliche or typical, or somehow I think a lot of us fall into kind of two camps. One, we had somebody very influential in our life, right? That completely changed our life, whether that was a personal trainer or a PE teacher or a family member or something like that. Or you had like a traumatic experience. And I think some of us could probably mold or blend both of those, and you actually have that. So that was actually my case. I had always been a bigger guy. I ended up playing offensive line at the Springfield College. Just wanted to point that out as our earlier discussion.
There you go.
Wish you could have been there, my man. Wish you could have been there. But so, always been on the bigger side and love lifting weights, right? Wanted to play sports, be better, all that good stuff. So I did the whole traditional thing, right? Got a Joe Weider vinyl, 110, 100, whatever pound weight set, my basement gym, which was also my room because that was awesome in middle school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Went through the ranks, trained, did that whole thing. And then in terms of like the formal aspect of like the eureka moment, I was a senior football player in high school, right? So ball is life at that time. Like there's nothing else that matters. And snapped my arm like clean in half.
Wow.
A week before our first seasonal game.
So I gotta ask, how did that happen? If you don't
Yeah,
mind me
great. I appreciate you following up. So I was a tight end. So I was kind of like a bigger tight end, do the 5 and outs and whatnot. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. So we're a week from our season opener, and went up for the ball. Right before I caught the ball, I got my legs taken out for me. So like 250 pounds just came slamming down.
Big tight end.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. In high school, you were 250?
Well, by the end of it, yeah.
Wow.
So,
and how tall are you?
What's that? About 6'1".
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I will note though, I stayed with the ball. The ball did not drop.
There you go. That's what
Snap the
matters.
arm in half, get me on a stretcher. I'm holding on to this thing, right? So it was during that process. I had no idea what I was going to do. I thought I was going to be a history teacher because, going back to that like moldable part of your life, you always had that somebody, right? That teacher that just, maybe they were younger, maybe they just got you, right? At that time, like this guy was like doing Napster. I don't know if you guys remember Napster at all.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, this guy understands it, and he's talking about music, and I'm like, I'm going to be like that, right? So snap my arm in half, and it's like, now what? Have no idea what I'm going to do, sulking, going through the whole self-loathing thing, which I think anybody goes. It's a natural cycle. And I'm on the sidelines at practice, just wasting space and just chatting up with our athletic trainer and just thinking about the future. And he just threw it out there, like, you need to go into strength conditioning. He's like, you need to, what you've been doing, captain's practice, all that stuff you do as a high school, right? Running all these workouts and like the universal stack machine that you have. You got like 40 kids.
Yeah.
Trying to do everything you can, right? And so luck be it, Springfield College was literally right down the road, like 15 minutes away from where I grew up, and did my research. And that was pretty much like the cradle of coaching. And so when you look at a lot of strength conditioning programs, whether it's professional, it's college, it's private sector, you can find a lot of roots back to that. So I went there, studied applied exercise science as an undergrad, had an opportunity to do a little redemption with my athletic career, and ended up having a great career at Springfield College there, and got a lot of coaching experience and kind of stayed in that space for a long time and went through pretty much every level of athletics, did a stint in the NFL, worked at the Olympic Training Center,
Amazing.
became a head coach in Division I, helped open up a place for a few years in the private sector. And throughout that process, just kind of kept getting better and exploring the edges and the boundaries of health and fitness and now sports psychology and nutrition. So kind of been all over the place.
That's awesome.
Do you sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but do you know Hal Luther? He was a strength coach.
Yeah, I actually did Hal Luther is a legend. Legend has it. It's not even legend. This is fact. We had a board at Springfield College, like a bulletin board of like legends in the field, right? So you would go there for like advising and you'd meet with your advisor and it was like, I'm going to be that guy, all right? I'm going to be that coach. And Hal Luther was on that, I think, during his time at Syracuse at the time. Yeah. And I actually got reacquainted with him last year. I did a workshop for the Buffalo Bills. And so he's down there with another Springfield alum, Eric Ciano, and was just like, I'm not trying to fanboy, but I was like, Coach, you have no idea. Like your black and white, like atrocious bio photo, like inspired me.
No. When you think of a strength coach, like the only person I think of is Hal Luther. Like, like physically looks just like a strength coach, bald
That's
head.
it. Yeah. So
just the biggest legs I've ever seen. Yeah. So I was an intern at Syracuse under him when I was there, 2009 to 2013, him and Coach Hicks.
Yeah, Coach Hicks, legend there, right?
Yeah,
Will Hicks, like everything he's done. So, it's been really neat just, through the evolution now and just finishing up my PhD and just going back and going through all that stuff and being like, wow, like I'm very respectful. I still call people coach, but also being on the level where like we can just hang out and talk shop and be awesome with it. So,
I mean, Springfield really is like one of the meccas for exercise science. So, I mean, you think of some of the biggest names, like you mentioned, a lot of them come out of Springfield, the coaches too, a lot of good football coaches as well.
So before we go into like the real nitty gritty questions, I want to get this out of the way.
Oh, I knew it was coming.
Who's your favorite NFL team?
Ooh, what if I told you I didn't have one?
Okay. Who's your favorite team to watch?
What if I told you I didn't have cable?
Love that.
Where's the apps?
Where's the what?
How about the apps, the NFL app?
I didn't think about that.
See, this is, and then,
I grew up. So I grew up, a New England Patriots fan, right? I think if you're not supporting your home team, what's wrong with you, right? Unless you were transplanted there, so to speak, right? And what I found was, great, right? I remember loading the wood stove up when I was a kid, and I just like, paper and kindling and all that, and they're like, and the New England Patriots take Tom Brady, in like one of the last rounds, and I'm like, this guy, how about this guy now, like who would have thought? So I did that, and then actually I started coaching in college, and I was just very fortunate to be in a lot of great programs, and a lot of the guys that I just had a small hand in working with ended up playing all over. So as I got older, I was like, oh yeah, Buffalo Bills, they send me a shirt, right? Or, oh, go down there, the Redskins, right? The shirt. So it was great to evolve as a coach and kind of supporting everybody. Then I got a contract with the Carolina Panthers. So if you asked me that, I'd be like, yeah, Panthers all the way, 100%.
There you go.
When were you with the Panthers?
I was there actually Cam Newton's rookie season. So I was his strength conditioning coach in 2011.
Okay.
How was that?
Oh, it was a one and done. The NFL stands not for long, so got a taste of it, and reevaluate some life priorities and a lot of life transitions that year. There was a ton going on, and at the end of the year, I was like, I'd really love to get back into college athletics and look at it more of a long-term model because we all know it. It's a transactional game, and it's about what you do on Sunday more than anything. And I got that. At 25 years old, I was there. I think I understand it a lot more now being 35 and having a family and understanding and running a business. But did it and was like, all right, this was what I got and I'm going to learn from it and grow and get better and go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's, I have a very difficult time because I go through the same problem. People are always like, oh, well, you're from upstate New York. Like, you must be a Bills fan. I'm like, I mean, I guess, like, I don't have a favorite team either for the exact same reason you had. It's like, I know so many people that play in the league now that's like, I don't want to root against them. I love these guys, Yeah.
And I think even in the coaching context now, I know now more coaches and players because, take the Panthers, for instance. I remember starting there, right? You've got camps, you bring in the 90 and then you're just, dwindling it down. by the end of that season, I think we had like 20 something guys still in the roster from August. Then when the Panthers go to the Super Bowl 2-3 years later, I got players being like, "Oh, Coach Adam, you know, who do you still know?" And I was like, to be honest, I don't know. Let's take a look at the roster. And there was like 6, right? 7 people. So, you know, what's the average tenure? Like 3
I think like
years.
3.2 years. Yeah, something like that.
And so seeing, you know, kids I've coached go into strength conditioning and performance, and now them coaching all over the place and helping our students. Like my wife is the associate director at Springfield College now. She's heavily involved in the grad program. So to just see them get all these opportunities, that means the most. You know, like last year, I had a former player from the football team, sent him to the Minnesota Vikings. Very fortunate to know, you know, Coach Uyama up there. You know, so now I wear Vikings gear. You know, it has nothing to do with I don't like the Patriots, but I'm supporting my people. You know.
So who would you say is the hardest working individuals you've seen, you know, in whatever team you've worked with? Who would you say that player is?
I got to go. One of the all-time greats was Eric Wood, who was our center at University of Louisville. So I was there in 2008, 2009.
Pro Bowler with the Bills, right?
Yeah, the Bills, right? So going back to the Bills thing, right now he's just crushing it with the commentating game and whatnot. But just got after it, was that incredible leader. I mean, we talk about leadership all the time in coaching, right? People want to know, like, you know, if he's leading, who's following, right? Like, people follow that dude. Like, that guy put in work, had an incredible presence, and, you know, obviously had suffered some injuries over his time in Buffalo, but really did it the right way. So I think from a college aspect, that would probably be like the top guy there. John Beeson, wasn't much time with him at the Panthers due to injuries and whatnot, but he was just, in terms of like overall athleticism, was just a freak, and just couldn't believe what I was seeing out there.
Yeah, it's always, you know, inspiring to kind of see those people that, you know, just, you know, naturally have it and then take it that next step, you know, putting their brain behind it. I want to dive into, you know, your specialty, your background. Like, what made you switch over from, or what made you kind of veer away from more the practical aspect of, you know, training athletes the way that a strength and conditioning coach has to train them, to focusing more on the psychology behind it?
Yeah, great question. A lot of it actually surfaced through my own evolution as a coach, right? And so actually, remember, I just defended it last month, and, you know, you kind of have to put up a slide that's like your researcher's interest, right? Mm-hmm. And so I really had to think about it, was like, did I have that eureka aha moment, like tipping point, right? Or was it really just an accumulation of like experiences here, experiences there, growing older, doing all that thing? And so when I look back on it, one of the first pieces was when I became a head coach at 24 at Division I, and had, am I going to say I was prepared? Yeah, 100%, right? Like, you're never prepared. I went from like second assistant to running literally the worst Division I football program in the nation at the time, right? Wow. In the shadow of University of Michigan. So I was at Eastern Michigan. And it was there where I really was like, okay, these kids are used to losing. The expectations from the coaches are on a level that is just like, I don't think this is going to happen, right? Then I'm trying to run my own staff. I'm trying to understand the politics and dynamics of like an entire athletic department. And then I suffered my own, I won't say issues, but maybe obstacles with optimal performance. You know, my fiance, well, soon to be fiance, now my wife at the time, was 6 hours away. I've got no social support. I'm coaching, I'm leading guys that are older than me because I got in younger, right? So that presents its own challenges. And I'm working for a staff in a department that wants gold, but they're so used to like gray and dirt and all of that aspect. So that was like really my first inclination of like, man, it's not about how much stronger I get them. Like, that's part of the process, 100%, especially at a level like that where, you know, I went from the Big East football to the MAC, and it seemed like a pillow fight, right? Like, and we got waxed. I mean, I remember we played Murderers Row. We played Ohio State, Virginia, and Vanderbilt, like bam, bam, bam. We walked out of the horseshoe 71-10 with no broken bones. And I'm like, that was awful, right? So being in that environment of like, the expectation was like, well, we're going to lose, but let's not lose by a lot, right? Even though that was not the intention, you know, what do you say to your team at halftime and it's 42-0, right? So that was kind of the first indication of like what was happening there. Like, let's start looking about it. Then I get to the NFL, And then I realized there, like, it's everybody here is at the top of their game, right? The best of the best are not just the fastest and the sharpest, but they're the ones that take care of their body the most. They're the ones that train their mind. They're the ones that like look at every granular detail. And it was during that time I actually met with our sports psychologist at the organization just to try to understand what he was doing, work through some of the things I was working through. And that's where it kind of clicked, where I was like, okay, right? Why do the best stay where they are? Why do they continue to play? How are they reframing their situations? And at that level, you guys know this, right? Like you could be in and out and you've got to be able to like get back on a plane and do it again. Mm-hmm. You're always in a constant state of evaluation, right? And so, you know, growing up with all that, oh, you got to go train mental toughness and you got to, you know, work on your resilience. And, you know, unfortunately in the strength conditioning industry, right, it's not a very regulated industry. People are doing things they shouldn't be doing, right?
Exactly.
Hey, I've done some of that, right? Looking back, like, yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time and it wasn't, okay? So going from high level in my eyes, but it wasn't, to the highest level. And then it clicked when I started my own facility with a guy I literally met on the internet, Bobby Smith, who reached out, had a job ad and was like, you know, I'm a former Olympic trials champion in the javelin, 2008. My wife's a physical therapist. I want to open up a facility. I need a director. I need a partner. I need somebody to do this with me. And going from working with the highest level of abilities to now working with high school kids, you want to talk about a shift in performance mindset and the ability and the responsibility of a coach to not only develop a relationship, but also to improve their own self-confidence. That was huge. And so at the same time, I start working for Precision Nutrition. They start looking at things in terms of nutrition coaching, not from a matter of macros and grams and calories, but rather thoughts and feelings and behaviors and actions. So I said, here I am. It's behavior psychology, like truly trying to understand why people are doing the things that they're doing and not doing the things that they, in their eyes, should be doing. And how can I apply that to now strength conditioning and sports performance, right? So that brought me to an opportunity to do a PhD in sport and exercise psychology, because I knew I wasn't going to do exercise physiology, because that is just bad in my opinion.
Boring.
Yes. I mean, what's going to happen with the rate limiting step of, you know, glycolysis? Like nothing. I can't do anything with that.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. So my wife had an opportunity. So actually, because of her, she actually had the opportunity to come up back to Springfield. She wanted to get back into higher ed and teach. So I pretty much did what any great spouse would do, asked her for permission. Like, hey, I know you're doing your thing and I'm really happy for you. She went the teaching route, but I was like, I'd really love to do mine too. So somehow, by the grace of a lot of support and probably too many microwavable pizzas over the last couple of years, we were able to get it done. So my opportunity and my role is to, how can I bridge that gap? How can I help coaches coach better? And how can I get them to infuse the cognition, the ability to motivate appropriately, to build better relationships, but also to add more skills to their strength coaching toolbox, instead of just another periodization cycle, instead of another $1,500 velocity-based analyzer, like all of these gadgets. We've got a lot of tools already. We've just got to put them in front of them and actually teach them how to use it.
100%. And first of all, that whole process of your journey, it was truly amazing to just see from the starting point to where you're at now and what you're doing.
I closed my eyes for a little bit. I could remember myself in that. I was like, I mean, I remember doing that. I remember thinking, man, I fucked that up. Like, you know,
but it's all par for the course, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, every year you get older, you think about, you do a little bit more reflection and however you look at it. But at the time, it seemed like a good idea, right? You thought you had all the knowledge, and then I look at it now like I'm a dad. I've got an 8 and a 6-year-old, and I've got an incredible partner who's like crushing her game. And I look back on like, why did they say that? Why did they think that? Why, you know, where did this come from? And then you just realize like, man, they're kids, right? Or you're young, you feel like you're invincible, right? I've been helping out at the college, like 18 to 22 years old, trying to navigate the situations around the pandemic. And, you know, they're not making good decisions, but at the end of the day, you're like, I don't blame you. Like, one, you're not fully developed yet. And two, like I probably did do the same thing when I was your age.
So I definitely want to dive into like, how is the coaching going for you, and what is the approach you're taking, especially during the pandemic, and seeing where things are going again, where, hey, there might be possible shutdowns. People
Mhm.
got a big taste of what it felt like. It was a shock for everybody, caught them, off guard. But now people kind of have an idea if we enter this second wave. You're already seeing some shutdowns in different states. But what is your way to approach this, especially when you're working with a client, for those who need the help? And what's the best way for all coaches to start thinking about applying these certain, tools and tactics that you may be doing to just better enhance this person's lifestyle during this time?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think we can take that in a lot of different areas. The biggest thing that I've seen, and maybe it's the obstacle or maybe the lever that we have to push or pull here, is to really bring them to a consciousness or an awareness of like where are your feet right now. And I say that, and it's not a cliche to just say, you got to be here in the now, right? Like, don't worry about everything that's happening. But what we tend to do, whether as coaches, whether we're clients, whether we're athletes, or all of the above, is we try to exert all of the control on all the things that we can't, right? And now more than ever, we are getting tested mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, every other adverb you can put in there, about there's this element of all of these things are happening to me, and I can't prepare for that, right? I can't plan what I'm going to do tomorrow. Our coaches at the college, they can't write a 4-week program. We usually have them write a 12-week program or 16 weeks for the semester, and they're going day to day. And so to bring them, actually, I call it like putting them in neutral, right? I had a Jeep Wrangler for 9 years, God rest its soul. And apparently it wasn't family friendly. I mean, we can have that argument another day. There was a hole in the floor from the rust, but it was a standard transmission. And it was like, if you're not hitting the gas and you're not hitting the brakes, like, where are you? You're coasting, right? So you'd put it in neutral and you'd shift down the hill or whatever it was. And I think that's very important for athletes and clients and coaches right now, to just shift into neutral thinking and just take an audit, take an awareness of what's happening, what are you feeling, and not applying any judgment to that, right? And so, experts might call that like a form of mindfulness, right? Like not just non-judgmental awareness of what's happening around you. So I think that's step one. And then I think going from that, step two is to start actually doing that inventory of like, okay, hey, what are the things that you have direct control over? We talk about all the time, like, control your inner 8, right? It's your attitude, it's your preparation, and it's your effort. These are the things within your domain or your spheres of control that, regardless of the circumstances, whether it's snowing outside, it's raining outside, you have a mask on and you're having a hard time breathing, you can control the attitude that you bring to that. You can control your preparation for that situation. And obviously, like anything in coaching, like, how much effort are you going to expend? And so we start putting our clients and our kids through this process to get them to understand that there's going to be some uncertainty out there. And when you are out of your routine, it's going to show, and you've got to work on your adaptability. And so kind of like where I'm going with this is, we had a discussion with our athletic department. They wanted to say, Adam, you got to talk to our coaches about resiliency, right? Like, you've got to, we're in unprecedented times. This is happening. I'm like, I'd love to, right? And we couldn't even get to that because we did not entertain the space for the venting and the grieving and just the opportunity to just express that emotion. And so that goes back into having the opportunity to just like be here right now and just call that out. And at PN, we call that like noticing and naming, right? Notice what's happening to you, notice what you're feeling, notice what you're thinking, and give it a name. And what is that? Because oftentimes in athletics, as you guys know, or training, you're told to push through it, right? You're told to not express how you're feeling, or your coach rips into you. And what are you going to say? You're going to say, got it, coach. Yes, coach. Right. Yep. So it's important there that we really come full circle. And once we've established that, once we get an idea of where we are right now, I try to make it as specific as possible and as small as possible, because most of us want to have a plan. Most of us want to have an idea of like what we're going to have for dinner later tonight, right? I don't know what I'm having for dinner later, and it's kind of freaking me out a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I want to have that. So it's that control piece. And so
it's a microwavable pizza.
Yeah, those are long gone now.
Thank God.
I had a moment in like early July where I was like, I'm going all in. I gotta fix this, right? So yeah, we took those out. Of course, I was like, well, I'll start again on Monday, right?
Yeah, always.
And so I want to break it down as simple as possible, but because here's why, and I talked about this with our soccer team, is that we want to wait for the motivation, right? We wait to be inspired. We look at YouTube Rocky training montages, right? We turn on our Spotify playlist. We're looking for that like dose that's going to be like, yeah, like this is it, right? It could be in a good way or it could be in a bad way, right?
Sure.
Like we see something on Instagram or somebody makes a comment, or you step on the scale and you're like, all right, now I'm inspired. And so because I'm inspired, now I'm motivated to do the thing. And then the action piece comes in there. But the action piece, it's all completely opposite. It shouldn't be inspiration, motivation, action. It should be, what can we do right now? I want to act right now. So, oh man, I got a podcast coming up, and usually I prepare my notes or I do a lot more research. Well, what's the one thing I can do right now that's within my control, and that's going to help me move forward. And by moving forward, we get on this like mindset of it's got to be all the way, right? Like the quote from the movie, like it's 0 to 10, but this is an 11. Like, well, why don't you just make 11 louder? No, it's an 11. Like we think we have to go from all or nothing to like always something. And so to actually come back to that and saying, all right, this is your goal. These are all the things that are happening. You're now aware of that. Now let's shift back. Let's put you back in the driver's seat. Okay, we're at a neutral. Let's go into what's first gear. What's the thing that you can do right now? And I might do that in all aspects of their life. If it's an athlete, it might be, all right, talk to me about school, right? Now you're all remote, man, that sucks. Like, I get that, right? Now you're locked up in the dorms. So how is this going to affect your nutrition? How is this going to affect your social connection without violating COVID policies, right? If we're working with a client at Precision Nutrition, or I'm working with a coach, right? What do I do now, right? My gym is closed down. It's another wave, or the governor said this, right? We're all dealing with that right now. And I think when we rush to like, here's all the things, right? You got to change this strategy and do this marketing funneling, and you got to change your whole message. That's going to freak your customers out. That's going to freak your clients out. You've got to be as level-headed as possible and be here in the now, and simply let's just keep moving the needle forward. And so I say simply as in, hey man, I know it's not that easy, but I really try to, as fast-paced and as energetic I may be coaching during this sports psychology or mindset piece, it really is about taking some time to slow down. And when things happen to us that come out of us, whether that's a blind side or a curveball, we naturally, like, we're going all in or we're going to completely collapse. And so it's really about like micro dosing the next thing. We've got to figure out the thing to do now before the next thing. And that's super, super important, especially with everything that's happening.
How do you break that cycle for those people? I mean, I have a ton of clients that, have worked with me for years, and they continually go through these cycles of like, okay, I'm all in. Okay. Nope. One bad meal. Okay. Fall off until Monday. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, but what about Tuesday or, Thursday or Sunday for that matter? How do you get people to really understand, like really come to grasp with the fact that like, that's not the mindset you got to have to see the success that you really need to see with these sustainable changes that take a while?
Yeah. If I could give you the answer, I probably wouldn't be on the podcast right now. I'd be signing a book tour worldwide. Just like training, right? There's multiple ways of doing that. One metaphor or analogy, however we want to look at it, especially working with diets, for instance, right? Is like the use of a phone. So when workshops were a thing, right? When we would actually like get together and breathe on each other and slap hands and like go out to eat. Remember those days, guys? Like that was way back. We went to
one a couple of months ago. I was like, man, this is really weird.
Yeah. Like, hey, hold up, man. Back up a little bit, right? An example I use, like, let's take an iPhone, for instance. Okay. I'm old. I'd say old school, but like I still got an iPhone, single digit. It's like a 6 or 7, right? It does its job. It's got like 128 gigabytes. So like I'm never running out of anything. It's great. My wife, on the other hand, just picked up like one of the new 11s or 12s because hers cracked, right? Or broke. Something happened. And I remember in a workshop, I was like, let's treat this like a diet, right? You dropped your phone, right? You had what you call a cheat meal. Maybe you overate. Maybe you drank a little bit too much. It's natural for us to just go ahead and be like, we call it the F it effect, right? F it. Like, I already blew it, man. Like, come on, right? But right there, I challenge that assumption. I challenge that to say, well, but why do you have to go to that extreme? Because if I drop my phone and I scratch it, and this worked really, really well with kids, mom and dad aren't just going to buy you a new phone. So you can't take that phone and be like, I scratched it, wham, and just drop it down. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. And once you find something, again, that doesn't work with everybody, but if you find something that they can be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like I would just pick it up. So I'd say, all right, you would pick it up. It's busted. What would you do? He's like, I'd probably go to the eye repair shop and get like one of the glass cases or whatever. I'd get an OtterBox or something like that. Like, yeah, you would do what you had to do, but you wouldn't just be like, well, mom and dad are just going to get me a new one, because chances are that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so by reframing it as, it's asking these deep questions, like what is driving you to go to the next level, right? Or, there's a phrase I use with my buddies back in college, like when we were going to get after it, like if it was a big win, it's like we're going to go to the abyss. Like we're not just hanging out and socially drinking. Like we're going all in, and we all know how the effect of that in the short term and long term is, right? Haven't been there in a long time, so for all the listeners out there, maybe my wife upstairs.
Let me put it out there.
You guys are slapping the bag still.
Put it out there.
Just want to clarify. And so it's challenging those assumptions of like what is leading you to believe that you have to do that. Right? Well, you start to analyze like, all right, let's go back to food. Like, is it because it's a red light item, right? Is it because when I drink a bunch of beers or when I have a couple cocktails, I lose self-control. So because I've lost self-control, I'm a little bit more looser with my choices. So I automatically have to grab like the street meat if we're at the bar, or I'm going to order pizza or raid the fridge, right? But it's getting them to say, all right, you build up those data points essentially, and ask them, what is leading you to do that? What are some of the situations that don't allow that to happen? And you almost kind of reverse engineer that accordingly, right? But it's calling mindful attention to like, well, how does that make you feel, right? So you wake up in the morning, right? So I might work out, with it right now. It's like, well, when you do that, how do you wake up? And then they go through the whole process, right? I'm bloated, I'm puffy, I'm achy, like I feel inflamed, right? I feel awful. So then it's like, all right, well, tell me what you usually do. I'm like, well, then I just don't eat the rest of the day, or I fast for 8, 10, 12, 16 hours. And then I'm like, okay, right. So how, what happens next? And they're like, well, then I get so hungry. So then I overeat again, and then I make a bad choice. And so when we talk about identifying those cycles or those triggers, it's almost like, this is what you're doing. I want to bring a third-party auditing software consultant role to that, right? Like, oh, who's that guy? Well, that's the consultant. He's here to determine whether or not we need you or not. And that's what I want to take it, because I'm not going to judge them. I want to help them understand the choices, the thoughts, the feelings, everything that they're going through, what that manifests into. And an exercise that we actually do a lot of and recommend to our clients, especially at PN, is called like the opposite day principle. And it stemmed from like, I'm dating myself a little bit, but from the Seinfeld, George Costanza, like life sucks, everything's happening. And they're sitting down in their diner and they're like, well, what if you did the opposite, right? Like everything that you're normally doing now, let's challenge that and let's do the complete opposite, right? What does that look for? And what we find is that doing those opposite behaviors, again, within context of like reason and security and is this safe and whatnot, we're going to find that opposite isn't as bad as we perceived, right? So if I normally, I go out and I just kind of lose self-control and then I eat 4,000 calories at night, doing the opposite of that extreme of maybe not overeating or maybe only having one drink or doing something, it doesn't affect them as much as we once thought. And so that's like a simple thought exercise that we want to get them to thinking about, because everything for us is about outcome-based decision-making. We're going to ask our clients, if I'm hearing from you guys, you're like, yeah, I do this, and then that happens, and all of a sudden I end up over here, and, we go to Tijuana, and we're like, whoa, it's, hangover 4. It's like, well, how's that working for you, right? And we're not being sarcastic about it, but we're genuinely curious and trying to be compassionate about, take me through the steps. And that's another thing. We talk about another activity is like breaking the chain. Is what were you thinking when you were eating that? What were you feeling? Who were you with? Okay. What happened the hour before that, right? Especially now more than ever in the times that we're in, we're very emotionally charged with our eating habits, whether that's we're looking for an escape, we're bored, we're trying to cope with something that's happening right now. Like more things are shutting down and changing. So once we remember that any behavior that is done is an attempt to solve a problem, good, bad, or indifferent, finding out and breaking the chain of events throughout the day, throughout the sequence, is a super, super important strategy here to help, again, build more awareness of why they're doing what they're doing.
So I got to ask you, in this case where people fall off and, you know, about trying to get back on your feet and, you know, the extremes, what do you do as a coach, and advice for all the coaches when you have a client who you've been working with? There's a lot of roller coasters up and down, and then they come to you and they tell you, the only reason I'm doing this is because my wife or because a doctor told me. How do you handle that situation after you've worked with them for a while now?
What I learned a long time ago was that if you don't want the change more than somebody else, so for instance, let's say you're my client, right? If you don't want to change your lifestyle, your habits, your just overall way of being more than your wife wants you to change them, it will never work. As a coach, as much as it pained me to see incredible athletes like have this genetic ability to be the next greatest thing, right? Cover of Wheaties box, ESPN magazine. If I wanted that for them more than they wanted it for themselves, we're going to have a hard time. I have seen that at PN. I've seen that with spouse programs, right? Oh, we're going to do it. It's going to be fun, right? Like, and it's like, no, like you think I'm fat and disgusting, or I'm not living up to your expectations. I don't want to be here. So if they're doing a good job, I want to continue. I'm going to be a seeker of strengths. They're already used to having what we call like a detective deficits. That's the spouse. That's the person that's going to be nitpicking and pulling the things out, right? You left your socks out. You left your dishes out. I'm giving you a little history of how my spouse talks to me, right? So I'm just
I've
kidding.
been there.
I can name a whole
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yeah. And so as a coach, right, like you're the ally here, right? You're trying to say, all right, let's put this into context here. I want to find out about all the good things that you're doing and how can we do more of that? And so, yeah, they might be getting great results, okay? But you have to find a way. Here's another thing too that I learned in school, which was mind blowing, is like you can never motivate anybody.
That's right.
So when a coach says, or say, oh, I work for, you're here to motivate. No. You cannot motivate anybody. You can facilitate motivation to occur, right? It's just like teaching. I can't teach you anything, but I can create the environment, the climate, and the conditions for you to be open to receiving knowledge.
I love that.
I can give knowledge, right? Yeah, save that. That's tweet worthy.
It's like the same thing I tell people. It's like, you cannot make anybody feel a certain way.
No. And imagine if you could, right? Like it just,
I'll be amazing. We'd all be billionaires. Yeah.
Do, right. And that goes back to like the things that, you know, I talked about the spheres of control. There are things that you can control. There are things that you can influence. And then there are things that are just completely outside, like do not waste your space, your time, your effort, and all of that on there. And so if I've got that client, right, I'm only doing this because he or she wants me to do, well, I want to dig into that a little bit, right? And so, you know, we have an exercise called like the 5 whys, and it really tries to get the client from a space of a superficial reason, like you just said, I'm only doing this because my wife wants me to do it, to unpacking that, right? Well, why does your wife want you to do this, right? And then you just kind of dig in. And I found, right, it's not going to work on the first day, right? Especially if I just met you, you're going to be like, what is this guy doing? Like, I am just, yeah, I don't want to do this. I think that's the beauty of remote coaching now, is you can kind of just take your time with it and chip away. And then eventually it might take 2 whys, it might take 3 whys, it might take 7 whys, but you will get to a reason where it grabs on their core value, because he or she might realize that, well, the spouse, right, wants what's best for them, but then the spouse is going to be resistant to that, because we do know in coaching, the more I push, the more I direct, the more I tell you to do something, what are you guys going to do?
People
The
don't
opposite.
People don't
Hell
like
no, right?
I'm going to do the opposite. Don't tell me what to do.
I know Josh doesn't like to be.
Oh, no.
No, don't tell him what to do, man.
Don't infringe on my freedom.
Yeah. He's going to beat to his own drum. He's going to do his own thing. And the more we as coaches say, don't do that, you're naturally going to be like, watch me, you know?
Yep. It's like kids.
So yeah, it's 100%.
Even
right.
worse.
And so There's an element of autonomy, supportive coaching there. There's what we talk about at PN in terms of being client-centered. But to kind of bring all this full circle, I know we've gone in different directions, which I'm glad we did, because it explores that it's not just well, it's either this or that, right? There are going to be so many nuances to this approach. You have a client that's only doing it because of another person or because of another reason. Hey, that might work for the time being. A great coach can facilitate and can unravel those layers of motivation accordingly. You may not get to the core value. You may get a person that is completely resistant and sees no value and purpose in what you're trying to provide. That happens. But more often than not, you're going to get them to question, well, why does my spouse feel that way? What is my wife? And then, all right, maybe whatever it is, she or he notices that I'm not super active with the kids anymore. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, all right, well, how do you feel about that? Do you notice anything about that? If you could be the person you wanted to be, what would that person be doing? And so now we get into, framing the mindset of the future, right? We call it send me a postcard from your future. What are you doing? Where are you going? Who are you with? How are you feeling? And, that's, basic imagery, right, that we can talk about. And then maybe we put that in the back seat for them eventually. But if you ask the right questions over time, you might get to that thing, and it's going to take some time, where maybe that spouse was right. They just did a really bad job telling you why, because like we talked about earlier, nobody wants to be told what to do.
That's right.
And if we can just take our time and do some deep questioning and just hang on to it, you're going to get to that point where you're like, yeah, she wanted me to do it, but I realized that I don't like feeling like X, and I really want to do Y more. Or when Z happens, I want to be the best I can be. And then that opens a whole conversation with, what are your values, right? What are your priorities? Because you're going to prioritize what you value, and those ultimately are going to craft your identity. And so now you get into identity transfer, and you start unpacking the whole package of what it means to them now, what it's going to incur, and what it'll ultimately lead to when we're all done with this.
No, this is amazing, because I think a lot of coaches are going to actually be able to go back and use this with certain scenarios that might be showing up in their current coaching.
They're already
business.
running through my head.
Yeah,
Running through my head.
And then I wanted to ask you, when do you know, or what's the signals for the cutoff when you've tried every way to work with this client, but now you have to also preserve your energy and your time and not let it affect you? It's kind of knowing, when do you cut ties with this person? What are those flags? How does that look like? And how do you have that conversation with that client?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love how you guys are just stacking these on top of each other.
We've had
Obviously,
some practice.
I think, yeah. Have you done this before, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be upfront with your non-negotiables. And I think it's very tough. Let's talk about coaching family, right? Now, I'm not going to take a side tangent, but when a family member or a friend of yours wants coaching, and you're not upfront with how you want to be communicated to, what the value of what you're doing and your expectations, it's always going to be messy. And I think as coaches, we naturally gravitate towards that helping mindset of like, well, I'll take this call, right? Like I really said I wasn't going to take more coaching calls after 5 o'clock, or you know what, I'll reply back to another email because I really care and I need the money, et cetera, right? So when we go through this process, it's important to understand, I don't want to fire my clients, right? I personally do not appreciate that when people give up on people. However, you've got to remember, or I highly recommend you remember, that what you're asking them to do, are they truly ready to do the task? Are they willing to do the task? And are they able to do the task? And if you're getting resistance, they don't want to do the thing, or they're being rather disruptive, or they say, oh yeah, I got you, coach. Yeah, I'm gonna do my food log over the weekend, and I'm not gonna drink Saturday night, and I'm gonna do all my food prep on Sunday, right? Your typical Friday, Saturday, Sunday split. And then you show up and you meet with them on Monday, and they're like, yeah, didn't do any of those things, right? You as a coach, naturally, you're like, why are you paying me, right? Why are you paying me to help you? What I've noticed is that it's going to come down to a lot of things. It could come down to a lot of things, but are they saving face? per se, because they don't want to let you down, right? That's why clients change their food logs. Let's be honest, that happens quite a bit, right? Now I start tracking, right? In research, we call that the Hawthorne effect. You start modifying your behaviors now that you know somebody's looking, and that's a real thing, okay? So am I changing that? Is there an element of like, I don't want to let you down? And is there an element of like, do I really want to let you know how bad it is? Because now I'm opening up the Pandora's box. So you're going to see what I'm eating, what I'm not eating, how I'm acting and behaving. And so when you have that client, one, it goes back to, hey, what is the relationship that we're going to have here? We know that the coaching relationship, coach to client, therapist to client, the therapeutic, or what we call the coaching alliance, is huge. Like over 80% prediction of success and motivation. Like if you want, it doesn't matter what you know, if you don't have a great relationship with that person, it's not going to work. So it's about establishing that, being upfront with your expectations, but also understanding that there are going to be elements where you have to coach and live in the gray. Because if you're what we call like coach hard ass, and it's like, it's either this or that, there's going to be an extenuating circumstance. I'm just flat out telling you. Yeah. And if you're coaching during COVID right now, you better realize that that is more prevalent now than ever, right? You hop on a Zoom call and you're just like, why aren't they muted? Like, how have we not figured this out yet? But then you also realize that there's two kids in the background and whatnot, right? So to get back to where we were going, that client that's like, I'm all set with this client. Like, what are the flags? I think like anything, right? Like a relationship, right? Are they ghosting you, right? Are they saying one thing and doing another? Are they not getting back to you? Are they, just again, saving face? So that's where it leads us to like having a crucial conversation. And that in itself is a skill. Like there's a great book on it. We teach it to our students at PN, but it's how do you open up this opportunity to have this conversation, present the evidence in a non-judgmental manner, but understanding that you're coming from a place of common humanity, self-compassion, and you get that, and allowing the opportunity to be like, hey, I know you're trying super hard, right? Whether you believe it or not, I know that this is difficult, or I know what's happening right now may not be the best time. And that's okay. And I think what happens a lot in coaching, especially if you're dealing with like major issues, is that we often want to just refer our clients like away instead of just out. Like, oh, you're going through some stuff. I have a specialist. I have somebody in my corner that can help you.
Yep.
I'm going to work with you still, and I'm going to work with them. I'm going to make sure that we're all on the same team, versus you're messed up, or this is outside my scope, so I can't deal with you. It's the same thing with firing client. So I think once we become a little bit more mindful of our expectations, and then actually taking the time, I mean, we do this in motivational interviewing, but it's called like a readiness ruler, like on a scale of 1 to 10. And if they're not hitting like 8 and 9 or above, what we're asking them to do, or what we think that they're giving us resistance on, it's hard. It's too hard. Yeah. So change it. So before you fire them, and before you say they're being disrespectful, I'm pouring my heart and soul into it. It's nice taking their money, but I want results, right? Because that's going to help me with social validation and whatnot. Really take a deep dive and being like, why are they doing that? Am I asking too much? Am I asking too soon? Am I just assuming they can do it because on a Friday email, text, check, and they're like, yeah, I got it, no problem. Mm-hmm. So I always go back to like, what is their readiness, willingness, and ability to actually do the thing? Because more often or not, they're gonna do what they need to do to survive, and it might be expressed in a way that makes you upset as a coach.
You have definitely dropped tons and tons of nuggets, golden nuggets on here, and I know Josh was gonna say. I just wanted to add one more thing that I wanted to ask you, just because we're on this topic. Let's go on the flip side now of things, of being able to understand. Obviously, this is somebody who's already your client going through these flags. Mm-hmm. How about on the beginning part of before they're even your client, the vetting out process and asking the right questions? How do you go about that? And what are some of the main questions you would recommend a coach to always ask their client, their prospect, before they're a client, in order to even know if they're the right person, the right fit, mm-hmm. if they connect, and if they are ready to make a transformation in their life?
Yeah. You guys know what you're doing here. I love it. So right away, I want to find out, well, I guess let me take a step back. Don't go crazy with the questions. right? We have intakes and we have assessment forms, and you guys are familiar with all that, new client, what's your injury history, right? Medication, blah, 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 is get your actual critical information you need right now and make it, I think what also helps too, is put it in a form that's going to create the most safety and security for them. So an example, right? I used to help run a fitness facility for kids. Loved it. You had to do the assessment online, right? We had an iPad, like you can do it right here in the lobby. Well, and we have parents trying to do it. They can't figure it out. They can't see it, right? So then, well, you need to do it online, right? We're already creating so much resistance in that process. So before you even start asking questions, ask yourself, and this is like step 0 of our coaching process, is how am I creating the environment for this to occur? You've got to do you, and you got to be like, look, I only communicate through text or Voxer or Insta, whatever it is. But you've also got to be like, how do you communicate best, right? How would you like to receive the information? We live in an age now where everything can be done. It can be PDF, it can be fillable, it can be signed, all that stuff. Make the barrier to entry so easy they can't say no. I don't know if that's a sales tactic or a marketing tactic or just being a good human tactic, but if you want somebody to say yes, you have to remove the barriers.
You heard that, guys?
Louder in the back for the kids.
You heard that,
okay?
guys?
You've got to do that. And so for a new client, what we often do in the industry is we want to know about all the things that didn't work, right? Tell me about what didn't work at your last trainer, why they did that, right? We don't get taller by standing on top of other people in this industry. And I think there's too much of that. And so again, I want to create a warm, a friendly, positive rapport with them in an environment that they feel safe and secure. But I also want to make sure that they understand and respect and call it out, like deliberately. I appreciate you coming in today, right? To lose weight, to gain control of your health, to get stronger. You have a general idea, like this is going to be an investment. I just want to commend and I want to applaud you for making this decision. When I do consults with athletes in sports psych, and again, we face a stigma there. Everybody thinks it's about like, I'm sitting on a couch or they're sitting on a couch and I've got a pipe tobacco in my mouth and I'm like just writing feverishly, drawing cats, getting them to be like, no, it's not about that. It's about performance. And I can't get coach out of my head. She's in my head, whatever it is. I just want to say thanks. Like, respect the fact that they made a decision, a deliberate effort to come. So that's all like the pre-work, right? Like, all right, Adam, that's all great. Let's get into the questions. But you got to make sure you set that first and foremost. Secondly, right, what types of questions you ask? Great question on that, right? I want to know, what are the things that they're already doing really well? Okay. What are the areas? Did they already have prior success? Okay. For the person that has a roller coaster of weight gain, for instance, and I've been one of them. Okay. Been an offensive lineman, lost my identity, lost a bunch of weight, got into training again, came back, became a dad, boom, grad school, right? Like that's the natural ebbs and flows of life. And so a great coach doesn't just harp on like, well, tell me about like what made that happen. Like what how did you get to the lowest of lows, right? How did you end up in a van down by the river eating government cheese? Okay. Like we don't want to know about that right now. I want to know about when you weighed this, when you felt this, what was going on, right? What made that happen? I want to know. A flag that comes up to me is what kind of support do you have? What does your environment look like? Are you supported in this venture or this goal of yours by home? Friends, what's your job like? Because as we know, yes, weight loss, and I keep using weight loss just because, we're talking nutrition and stuff. It could be anything. Sticking to weight loss, we know, all right, it's going to come down to calorie deficit. However, we also know that a lot of things affect that. So what are the stress levels like? I want to just get an idea of that. I'm not looking for like, tell me everything that's stressing you out. And then all of a sudden it turns into a counseling session, which again is outside our scope. And maybe I should tell them to go get a divorce lawyer. We're not going to talk about that. But I've got to understand all the elements of stress, and whether that's emotional stress, whether that's physical stress, what's your training like? How often you train? What do you like about training, right? What are you looking for? And I think that's a key question there too. A golden question is like, and what are you looking for the most here? How can I best support you? We often think as coaches that I'm just going to give them a meal plan, or I'm just going to give them a new training plan. And I assume that they don't know anything. So at PN, like we do assessments. We talk about what's your nutritional level. We're going to find all that information out. But in terms of questioning, I want to put them in such a position that right away they're like, I am glad I came in. This person understands me. This person is accepting of me. They're no judgment whatsoever. They're truly invested in my process. And so those types of questions can unfold in many different ways, but it always comes down to how can I create that environment where we can allow this. Again, we're not motivating them. We're facilitating them to open up to us. And I'm going to get just what I need to get started and whatever, get them signed up, right? I'll see you on this day. And I'm going to take my time with slow dripping that information over time, because what I don't want to do is like assume that you don't know what you're doing, assume that you need me to be your savior, because I'm not. I want them to leave with the power that they know I have what it takes to do this. I'm in control. I just need a little guidance here, right? I need the bumper rails on the bowling alley. I need the guardrail on the road. I need that rumble strip that's like, keep me in check before I go off the edge again in terms of my health and wellness. And so however you create that is up to you, but they should be leaving. They should be getting in their car, or they should be signing off their Zoom, and they'll be like, I'm glad I did that. And I'm looking forward. I'm excited to move ahead. So I can't give you all the questions. I think it's obviously going to be context dependent, but you pry too much into their stuff, they're going to shut down, right? Yeah. You don't ask enough, you can't get what you need to just build a relationship. But I think even on adding on top of that, taking your time, and I've noticed this, that works really well with younger clients or even older clients for that instance. If you coach when you're supposed to coach, you're not doing anything extraordinary. You're just doing your job. And what I mean by that is I tell the younger coaches at the college, like, reach out when you've clocked out. If you're coaching 2 to 10, if you're coaching 9 to 5, it's very easy to say, great job, Josh, right? Great, awesome, great depth. Love what you did with the nutrition. Keep it up, right? But then all of a sudden you're at the grocery store on a Saturday and you see something in a discussion that you had with them, and you take a photo and you send it to them. And you're like, hey, I was just thinking of you. I think this would be a really great option. Or 9 o'clock at night, you're driving home and you shoot them an audio message and you're like, hey, I'm driving home. I actually started thinking about what you said, like towards the end of the workout. And it got me thinking, I just want to let you know X, Y, and Z, and we're moving forward there. So I think it's very important to always come full circle. Yeah, respect the 15 minutes, the 30 minutes, the 60 minutes. Sorry, that's all we got today, right? I got to get to my next client. But those little doses of like, they still care about me and they're still thinking of me, like on the weekend or at 11 o'clock at night when you're watching a Netflix episode and you were reminded of something, that strengthens the coach-client relationship on so many levels. It's unbelievable.
We talk about it quite a bit on the podcast. It really is just about finding those like little moments about, showing your client that you really do care about them and that, like you mentioned, you are thinking about them. And before we wrap things up, one of the things that I loved about PN when I was taking the level 1 course and then obviously diving into the online platform was that it was so people focused, so people centric, right? Client centric. And it wasn't so much about like, oh, well, I have this awesome 8-week, Mediterranean diet plan for you. It was, no, let's find the real problems that are going on in your life. And then let's try to, get you better at making, or implementing the habits that you need to make to improve on those things. So, I really appreciate this conversation that we had with you, Adam. I mean, it's been really insightful. It's brought back a lot of good memories and taught me a lot about, where I think I need to head even in my own business. So thank you for that.
Truly amazing.
I appreciate it. Well, I got the whole next hour blocked off.
Where before we wrap everything up, I know he's going to ask you a couple of quick questions at the end, like he always does. Where can people reach out to you? Like, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, so pretty active on Facebook, starting to get back into Instagram and Twitter simply because I'm finally done with school. So
congrats.
Instagram, thanks. Yeah, Instagram is at AE Feit, so F-E-I-T. Twitter is Adam_Feit, but definitely make sure you check out Precision Nutrition. So at Inside PN on Twitter and then at Precision Nutrition. And hit me up on Facebook. I got some friend slots open, so I'd love to connect with you. And that'll probably be the best way. Keeping social in the social world right now.
There you go.
All right, I'm gonna hit you. Got 3 questions. So there's one.
I love it. Lightning round. Let's go.
There was one that actually came up from the last thing we were talking about. So you mentioned about filling in, like you see something, let's say it's 11 at night, Netflix, something reminded you for your client, you shoot it your way. Maybe you're doing something, reminded you of a client, shoot it your way. How do you handle that as a coach if you have your own non-negotiables with your significant other to not be on your phone or do certain things that might have to do with work, but that could be an important thing to send to your client as a reminder to solidify that relationship with them?
Oh, thank God she doesn't listen to our podcast.
I laugh because like this was happening last night, right? I was like, hey, I just got a quick coaching call. I'll be up there in 30 minutes. And then I came up 90 minutes later.
Yep,
And, she's already done with the Ben and Jerry's and like passing out, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. It's having those conversations, but auto scheduling is a great thing, right? So I may just save the notes and then just wait till tomorrow. I think that is an active practice we all need to do better on. So understanding that, I don't think there's really work-life balance at all. I think there's this work-life blending now more than ever, right?
I agree.
Now more than ever. Like my kids are like, Dad, are you working? You work so much. I'm like, no, guys, you guys are at school 8 to 2:30. You never see that. So now that we're homeschooling, right? Like I can't be doing that. So I'm on all the time, and I'm off some of the time. So it's just being open but being okay with like, all right, can this wait? Can I just save this? And honestly, can I just save it for tomorrow and be like, hey, last night while I was watching this, I thought of you. And that's it. So
that definitely helps.
It's a lot of you gotta have that transparency. That's for sure.
Love that. Next one, I always love asking this. I know we asked it to your dynamic duo partner. When it comes to the relationship, when do you know when not to use your coaching tactics on your significant other, and when to shut that off, and when to like implement some of those things to better the relationship?
So Kate will probably back me up on this because we actually coached the level 2 program together. My spouse went through the program as well. We tend to do things as a team. She knows that we call it level 2 in her because that's our level 2 program. As soon as she gets a whiff of an open-ended question, she's like, I'm done.
So how is that working for you? We're
exactly
over.
Right. So can you tell me more about that? Right. Yeah. Or why do you think that is? So now that's evolved, right? Because I'm doing more mental performance stuff. She's like high alert, right? Like very hyper vigilant, like understands when that's coming. But for the people that don't have that opportunity or an obstacle, depending on how you look at it, it's you can sense it. Like I don't want to say it's like the spidey sense, right? Like you just get this feeling, but you have to catch up on those nonverbal cues, right? It's the tone. It's how they're presenting themselves, right? Like I was reading a study today and it was like 92% of communication is nonverbal. They're finding right now, especially in like the Zoom world, right? So if you notice something, whether that's how they trail off or the snappiness of their reply, those are good indicators. Like you've really got to have some satellites on to be like, all right, I may have struck a nerve or I may have kind of brought something that, but we don't want to talk about right now. And then you just kind of remind them like anything, right? Like, hey, I'm here if you need me. We'd love to help you out. But yeah, I've gone through that roller coaster, like open-ended questions, trying to unpack it. And then it's like, no, we can't do that.
I used to always differentiate it by saying like, okay, is this a listening conversation or a helping conversation?
Yeah. You want me to be
two very different. I can just be like, yeah, that really, that's shitty. It sucks. Or I can be like, okay, well, these 5 things that you need to do. Probably why I'm divorced.
Babe, don't start with me now. Don't start with me. Don't try that shit on me.
Yeah. I don't know how. You're level 2 in me. Don't you even do that right now. But you bring up a great point there in terms of like understanding what hat am I wearing as a coach. Like I tell my young coaches, like you got to be able to blow multiple whistles. Are you coaching kids? Are you coaching adults? So honestly, like I've had that when I was going through my dissertation process, and my wife is also a professor, but she's also my wife. And so when I would like gripe and complain, she would say something. I'm like, look, I really need you to come to me from a state of like being my spouse and like understanding how struggling and difficult this is. As a professor, she'll just tell me to suck it up and push through it, right? But like, I don't want to hear that right now. So I'm glad you brought that up because it is important to differentiate. How do you want me to come to the situation?
Love Absolutely. That, man. Big piece of advice. And last question, what's the biggest piece of advice you can leave off to all our listeners today in one sentence?
Adapt or die.
Boom.
I think that might be one of the best ones we've
Love it.
heard so far,
Big
for
time.
sure.
You guys heard it. Adapt or die.
Yeah, make sure you guys check out Adam. Check out Precision Nutrition. I'm a level 1 certified coach. Love it. I use it with my clients.
amazing.
It's amazing. Thank you again, Adam. Really appreciate you you coming on the podcast and sharing your story and a little bit of your insight. Till next
Love
time,
being
guys.
here, guys. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you,
Right.
brother.
Till next time, guys.